The court believed I was violent. My ex-husband had the evidence, police reports, witness statements, even a recording of me screaming at our son. For months, I watched my children slip away, poisoned against me by a master manipulator who turned victimhood into an art form. I was drowning in Derek's lies, losing everything while he played the perfect father. Then my 10-year-old son Ethan whispered 5 words that changed everything. "I've been recording Dad's calls." In that moment, I realized Derek had made one fatal mistake. He'd forgotten that in the age of smartphones and tablets, even children can become truth's most powerful witnesses. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. I'll never forget that moment in the courtroom. My 10-year-old son Ethan standing up, tablet in hand, his voice cutting through the tension. "Can I play something?" The judge, the lawyers, Derek with his smug expression, they all froze. And when that recording started playing, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. 6 months earlier, I was living in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment that smelled of old carpet and broken dreams. The walls were thin. I could hear my neighbor's TV through them, and the radiator clanked all night. But it was mine. After 12 years with Derek, having something that was just mine felt like freedom, even if freedom looked like a fold-out couch and dinners of ramen noodles. My name is Emma Sullivan. I'm 38 years old, and I'm fighting for my children. Every morning at 5 a.m., my alarm would go off, and I'd stumble to the tiny bathroom to get ready for my first job at the diner. After 8 hours of coffee refills and 4 smiles, I'd rush to my evening shift to the grocery store. 2 jobs barely covered rent and the lawyer fees, but I kept telling myself it was temporary. Everything was temporary. The hardest part wasn't the exhaustion or the empty bank account. It was coming home to silence when my kids should have been there. Ethan and Maya were with their father during the week, and I got them alternate weekends. That's what the temporary custody agreement said, anyway. Best interests of the children, the judge had ruled, looking at my financial situation versus Derek's stable income and 4-bedroom house. Ethan, my thoughtful 10-year-old with his father's green eyes, but thankfully my temperament, had grown quiet since the separation. He used to chatter nonstop about coding projects and Minecraft builds. Now our phone calls were filled with long pauses and careful words, like he was always afraid of saying the wrong thing. Maya, only 6, still ran to hug me during pickups, her blonde pigtails bouncing. But even she'd started asking questions that sounded rehearsed. "Daddy says you're sick. Are you getting better, Mommy?" Each word was a knife, but I'd just smooth her hair and tell her Mommy was fine, that sometimes grown-ups disagree about things. "You're losing ground, Emma." My lawyer, Sandra Mills, didn't sugarcoat it. We sat in her cluttered office, surrounded by manila folders and the faint smell of stale coffee. Derek's attorney is preparing to push for full custody. They're citing financial instability, anger management issues, and... She hesitated, adjusting her reading glasses. The police reports. 3 times during our marriage, Derek had called the cops on me. Each time followed the same pattern. He'd needle and provoke me for hours, sometimes days, about my inadequacies as a wife and mother. He'd follow me from room to room, his voice never rising, listing my failures with the precision of a surgeon. When I finally snapped, raised my voice through a pillow, once even broke a plate, he'd step back with a satisfied look and dial 911. "My wife is having an episode," he'd say calmly into the phone. "I'm concerned for our children's safety." By the time the officers arrived, I'd be the one crying, disheveled, while Derek stood there in his pressed shirt, ever the concerned husband. The police would take notes, suggest I calm down, and file their reports. Reports that now sat in Sandra's folders like time bombs. But those calls were I started. "I know," Sandra cut me off. "But judges see police reports, not context. You need to stay squeaky clean. Take those parenting classes. Don't miss any visitations. And for God's sake, don't give him any new ammunition." That night, I sat on my fold-out couch, staring at old photo albums. Pictures of Ethan as a baby, Maya's first birthday, Family vacations where we all looked so happy. Had we been happy? Or had I just gotten good at pretending? My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Kate. Heard Derek's telling everyone you had a breakdown at Whole Foods. What really happened? I hadn't had a breakdown. I'd seen Derek's mother at the store and tried to say hello. She'd loudly announced to everyone in the produce section that I was unstable and shouldn't be approaching her. When I walked away, fighting tears, apparently that constituted a public breakdown. This was Derek's gift, turning reality into whatever served his narrative. During our marriage, he'd convinced me I was too emotional, too forgetful, too angry. You scared the kids when you yelled about the dishes, he'd say, even though I'd only asked him calmly to help clean up. But say something enough times, and even the person living it starts to doubt their own memory. The knock at my door 3 days later nearly stopped my heart. 2 people stood there, a woman in a navy pantsuit with a clipboard, and a younger man with kind eyes that looked apologetic. Emma Sullivan? I'm Janet Crawford from Child Protective Services. We've received a complaint that needs to be investigated. My throat went dry. What complaint? She glanced at her clipboard. It's been reported that you yelled at your daughter Maya and locked her in a room during your last visitation. The room spun. Maya had been with me 3 days ago. We'd baked cookies, watched Frozen for the 100th time, and I'd French braided her hair. The only incident was when she didn't want to brush her teeth before bed, and I'd used my firm mom voice. Locked her in a room? She'd slept in my bed because she had a nightmare about monsters. That's not true. I managed. I would never. Ma'am, we're required to investigate all complaints. May we come in? I stepped aside, watching these strangers judge my small apartment, my life. They asked questions, took notes, examined the windows that didn't lock properly, which I pointed out would make locking anyone an impossible. They were professional, even sympathetic, but I knew how this looked in their files. Unstable mother, living in inadequate housing, under investigation. After they left, I called my kids. Ethan answered his father's phone. Hey, buddy. How is school?
Fine.
His voice was flat, careful. Ethan, did something happen? Did Maya tell Daddy something about our last visit? A pause. Then, barely a whisper. Mom? I heard Dad talking to someone about setting you up. He said you'd never see us again after the court date. My heart hammered. Ethan, what exactly did you hear? I have to go. Dad's coming. The line went dead. That night I started journaling. Not the gratitude journal my therapist suggested, but something rawer. I wrote about the gaslighting, the manipulation, the way Derek would smile at me in public while whispering threats only I could hear. I wrote about the time he'd convinced our friends I was bipolar because I'd cried at a movie. About how he'd systematically isolated me from my family by scheduling conflicts with every gathering, then telling them I chose not to come. The words poured out like poison being drawn from a wound. 12 years of doubting myself, of being told my reality wasn't real, of watching my confident self shrink into someone who apologized for existing. The court summons arrived 2 days later. In the matter of Sullivan versus Sullivan, petition for modification of custody. Derek was making his move for full custody. I sat on my apartment steps, legal papers in hand, when my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, shuffled past. You okay, dear? She asked, her voice kind. I looked up at her, this woman who'd probably heard me crying through the walls more times than I could count. I'm about to lose my children, I said. She sat beside me, her flowered housecoat rustling. You know what I see? I see a mama who works 2 jobs and still makes time to read stories to her babies on the fire escape. I see kids who run to their mother, not away from her. Don't you let anyone tell you different stories about yourself. That night, as I tried to sleep, Ethan's words echoed in my mind. Setting you up. My sweet, observant boy had given me a warning. The question was, what could I do with it? The battle for my children was about to begin, and I was armed with nothing but the truth. In Derek's world, I'd learned, truth was whatever he decided it should be. But somewhere deep inside, beneath layers of self-doubt he'd carefully cultivated, a small voice whispered, truth has a way of coming out. I had no idea how right that voice would prove to be. The courthouse smelled like old wood and disappointment. I sat beside Sandra, my hands folded so tight my knuckles went white, watching Derek's lawyer pace before the judge like a shark circling prey. Your Honor, we have documented evidence of Ms. Sullivan's erratic behavior, Attorney Richard Blackwell announced, producing photographs with a flourish. These images show the aftermath of one of her violent episodes: broken dishes, overturned furniture. Our client feared for his safety and, more importantly, the safety of the children. I wanted to scream. That violent episode was the night Derek had followed me around for 3 hours, telling me what a failure I was as a mother, how the kids were embarrassed by me, how his mother had been right about me all along. When I'd finally retreated to the kitchen to make tea, anything to escape his voice, he'd blocked the doorway. Running away again, Emma? Just like you run from all your problems. I'd tried to move past him. He wouldn't budge. My hand had knocked against the counter, sending a plate crashing to the floor. The sound had startled me so much I'd stumbled backward into a chair, tipping it over. Derek had immediately pulled out his phone, snapping pictures while muttering, "This is perfect." But in court, those photos told a different story. They showed violence, instability, danger. Sandra stood to object, but her voice lacked conviction. She was overworked, underpaid, and clearly overwhelmed by Blackwell's theatrical presentation. Her cross-examination felt like bringing a butter knife to a gunfight. Ms. Sullivan has been attending anger management classes, Sandra offered weakly, which she was court-ordered to take after multiple domestic disturbance calls. Blackwell countered smoothly. I could feel the judge's eyes on me, measuring, judging. The Honorable Margaret Wheeler had seen too many custody battles to have much patience left. To her, I was probably just another angry ex-wife trying to punish her former husband through the children. During the lunch recess, Sandra pulled me aside. "Emma, you need to consider settling. Joint custody with primary residence to Derek, alternate weekends, and Wednesday dinners for you. It's better than losing everything." "He's lying about everything," I protested. "Those photos, the police calls. He set it all up." Sandra's sympathetic look felt worse than contempt. "Honey, they all say that." I stumbled out of the courthouse, my chest tight, vision blurring. The world tilted. I couldn't breathe. Was this what drowning felt like? My legs gave out, and I sank onto the concrete steps, gasping. Hey, breathe with me." A woman's voice cut through the panic. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. That's it." Strong hands guided me to a bench. As my vision cleared, I saw a woman about my age with kind brown eyes and streaks of silver in her dark hair. She wore a business suit but had kicked off her heels, sitting cross-legged beside me like we were at a sleepover, not a courthouse. "First custody hearing?" she asked. I nodded, still focusing on breathing.
"I'm Marissa Chen."
Been through this circus myself. 2 years ago, my ex tried the same playbook. False accusations, staged evidence, the works. Classic narcissist manipulation. "Did you win?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I survived. Sometimes that's the best we can do. Coffee. Over burned courthouse coffee. Marissa shared her story. Her ex-husband had convinced their social circle she was an alcoholic, had called CPS repeatedly, had even hired a private investigator to follow her. But she'd fought back by documenting everything, building a support network, and refusing to let him rewrite her reality. "The thing about men like our exes," she said, stirring her coffee, "is they count on us staying silent. They weaponize our shame, our fear of not being believed." The afternoon session was worse. Derek took the stand, every inch the concerned father in his tailored suit and perfectly styled hair. He spoke softly, occasionally dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief I'd never seen him use in 12 years of marriage. "I just want what's best for Ethan and Maya," he said, his voice catching. "Emma's a good person, but she needs help. Professional help. The children deserve stability." On the drive home, I stopped at Best Buy and bought a webcam. That night, sitting in my dimly lit apartment, I hit record. "My name is Emma Sullivan," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "And I need to tell the truth about what happened to my family.
For 2 hours, I talked.
About the gaslighting, the isolation, the way Derek would provoke me into reactions he could document. About how he'd convince me I was crazy, unstable, a bad mother. About finding the courage to leave, only to have him use the system against me. I don't know if anyone will ever see this, I concluded. But I need to say it out loud. I'm not crazy. I'm not violent. I'm just a mom who loves her kids and married a man who knows how to wear a mask really, really well. I saved the file, but didn't upload it anywhere.
Not yet.
The next weekend with the kids, I could feel Derek's influence everywhere. Maya flinched when I reached to fix her hair, something she'd never done before. Ethan barely spoke during dinner, pushing his spaghetti around his plate. Dad says you might be going away, he finally said. What do you mean, honey? He says the judge might decide you need special help. Like a hospital or something. My fork clattered to my plate. Ethan, I'm not going anywhere. He bought me a new gaming system, Ethan continued, not meeting my eyes. And he said if I'm good, if I tell the truth about how you scare us sometimes, maybe the judge will let us stay with him all the time. He says it's what's best. My heart cracked. Do I scare you, Ethan? He finally looked up.
No.
But Dad says you do. He says I just don't remember right. That night, after the kids were asleep, I crept into the bathroom and played my video diary on my phone, volume low. Was this what I sounded like? This woman talking about psychological warfare and systematic manipulation? Even to my own ears, it sounded paranoid, unhinged. But then I remembered Marissa's words. They count on us staying silent. The next morning, while making pancakes, I heard a crash from the living room. Ethan had knocked my laptop off the coffee table. As I helped him pick up the scattered papers, I realized my video file was still open. Were you watching something? I asked. He nodded, tears in his eyes.
I'm sorry, Mom.
I didn't mean to snoop. I wanted to understand. Understand what, baby? Why Dad says those things about you. Why you cry at night when you think we're asleep. Why everything feels like a lie. I pulled him close, this boy who is too young to be carrying such weight. Sometimes, honey, people can make you doubt what you know is true. Even grown-ups. Even moms. Is that what Dad does? I chose my words carefully. Your dad loves you very much. But sometimes people can love their children and still do things that aren't right. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he whispered, I've been keeping secrets too. What kind of secrets? Dad doesn't know I figured out the password to his iPad. And sometimes I record things. Like when he's talking on the phone about you. Or when he practices what he's going to say in court. My heart stopped. Ethan, what have you recorded? Lots of stuff. Like last week, when he was laughing with Uncle Pete about making you crack in court. He said he got someone to edit your voice from old videos to make it sound like you were yelling at me on a phone call. I sat back on my heels, the implications hitting me like a wave. My 10-year-old son had been gathering evidence. While I'd been drowning in self-doubt, he'd been watching, listening, understanding far more than any child should have to. Can you show me? I asked. He shook his head. Not yet. Dad checks my tablet sometimes. But I've been saving everything to the cloud. I think I know how to help you. But you have to trust me.
Trust.
Such a simple word. So hard to do after years of having your reality questioned. But looking into my son's earnest eyes that had seen too much, understood too much, I realized I had no choice. I trust you, baby, I said. I trust you completely. As we finished breakfast, Ethan said something that would echo in my mind for weeks to come. Dad thinks he's the only one who knows how to play games. But I've been watching, and I'm better at it than he thinks. The next court date arrived with all the warmth of a winter storm. Derek's lawyer had submitted new evidence, a recording of me allegedly screaming at Ethan during a phone call. The audio was crackling, distorted, but unmistakably angry. This is what the children endure, Blackwell declared, playing the recording for the court. Miss Sullivan's temper is uncontrollable, even over the phone. I listened in horror to my own voice, warped and venomous, saying things I'd never said. Sandra objected, citing the poor quality and questionable authenticity, but Judge Wheeler allowed it. During recess, I confronted Sandra. That recording is fake. I never said those things. Can you prove it? She asked tiredly. Do you have recordings of your actual conversations? I didn't. Why would I? I never thought to document every interaction with my children. That weekend, when I picked up the kids, Ethan was different. There was a determination in his eyes I'd never seen before. Dad got really mad yesterday, he told me as we drove home. I asked him about the phone recording. Asked if he changed it to make you sound mean. What did he say?
He yelled.
Really yelled. Not like how he usually talks, all quiet and scary. He actually yelled. Ethan pulled out his tablet. And I got it all. He played a recording. Derek's voice, loud and sharp. Don't you question me, Ethan. Your mother is poisoning your mind. She's sick, and if you keep defending her, you'll never see her again. I'll make sure of it. When did you start recording him? I asked, stunned. After I watched your video diary, he admitted. I realized Dad does the same thing to us that he did to you. Makes us think we remembered stuff wrong. Makes us feel crazy. But if I record it, I can listen later and know what really happened. That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan showed me his evidence folder. Dozens of audio files, organized by date. His father planning with lawyers, coaching Maya on what to say to CPS, laughing about making me crack like an egg. There's more, Ethan said. Remember 3 months ago when Dad said you yelled at me during dinner at his house? I nodded. Derek had filed a complaint with our caseworker about it. I was doing homework at the kitchen table when he was on the phone with someone, Ethan explained. Listen to this. He played another recording. Derek's voice. Yeah, I've got some old videos from when she actually did yell back when we were married. My guy can splice them together, make it sound current. Judge won't know the difference. Ethan, I whispered. Do you understand what this means? It means Dad's been lying. About everything. His young face was solemn. I kept thinking maybe I was remembering wrong. Maybe you did yell, and I just forgot. But then I started writing things down right after they happened. And recording. And nothing matched what Dad said later. The next morning, I called in sick to both jobs and visited my old friend James, who taught computer science at the community college. I showed him one of Ethan's recordings. Can you verify this is authentic? I asked. Not altered or edited? He ran it through several programs. It's clean. No signs of manipulation. Timestamps match the metadata. This is admissible evidence, Emma. I made copies of everything, storing them in multiple locations. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I fired Sandra. I understand, she said when I told her. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. With the custody hearing 3 weeks away, I was now representing myself. Terrified, didn't begin to cover it. Marissa connected me with a paralegal who helped me organize the evidence properly. We created a timeline, cross-referenced recordings with Derek's claims, documented every discrepancy. This is solid, the paralegal said. But you need to be strategic about how you present it. Spring it too early, and his lawyer will find a way to exclude it. Meanwhile, Derek escalated his campaign. He filed a motion claiming I was coaching the children against him. He had Maya's teacher submit a statement about concerning behaviors, though when I spoke to the teacher privately, she admitted Derek had helpfully suggested what to write. 2 nights before the hearing, Ethan knocked on my bedroom door. Mom, I need to tell you something. He climbed onto my bed, curling up like he used to when he was little. I saved everything to a USB drive. I gave it to Mrs. Henderson at school. She knows about everything. Mrs. Henderson was his 5th grade teacher, a woman I'd briefly met at parent conferences. Why did you give it to her? Because Dad started checking my tablet more. He almost found the recordings yesterday. I had to delete them from the device.
He looked up at me.
But Mrs. Henderson has everything. And she said she'd help. The next day, I got a call from an unknown number. Miss Sullivan? This is Grace Henderson, Ethan's teacher. I think we should meet. We met at a coffee shop. Mrs. Henderson, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes behind thick glasses, slid a USB drive across the table. "Your son is remarkable," she said. "He's been documenting everything for months. He came to me because he was afraid his father would find and destroy the evidence. Why are you helping us?" She stirred her coffee slowly. 20 years ago, I lost custody of my daughter to a man very much like your ex-husband. I didn't have proof. Just my word against his. I've regretted staying silent ever since. That night, I listened to every recording again. The most damning was from the previous Friday. Derek talking to his lawyer, laughing about the doctored evidence, planning to destroy her once and for all in court. But what struck me most was a conversation between Derek and Ethan from 2 weeks prior. "Derek, your mother doesn't really love you, son. If she did, she wouldn't have left us." "Ethan, but you told her to leave." "I heard you." "Derek, you're remembering wrong. You were too young." "Ethan, I was 8. I remember everything." "Derek, no, you don't. And if you tell anyone different, you'll regret it. Understand?" The silence that followed was chilling. On the eve of the hearing, I sat down to write letters to my children, just in case. If Derek won, if I lost them completely, I wanted them to have something for me. "Dear Ethan," I wrote, "you are the bravest person I know. You've carried burdens no child should carry, and you've done it with grace and wisdom beyond your years. Whatever happens tomorrow, know that you've already saved me. By believing in truth when lies were easier, by trusting your own mind when others told you it was wrong. I love you more than words can say. Dear Maya," I wrote to my daughter, "you are sunshine in human form. Don't let anyone dim your light. Trust your heart. It knows what's real, even when grown-ups make things confusing. Mommy loves you to the moon and back, forever and always." That night, Ethan made his final recordings. He'd been taping conversations all day, including one where Derek explicitly threatened to make sure your mother never sees you again after tomorrow. "Mom," he said as I tucked him in, "I want to bring my tablet to court tomorrow." "Why, honey? There's something else." Something I recorded Friday night after Dad thought I was asleep. He was on the phone with someone planning something for court. I think you need to play it." "What's on it?" "The truth," he said simply. "All of it." I kissed his forehead. This child who had become my unexpected hero. "Okay, baby, we'll bring the tablet." As I lay awake that night, I thought about silence, how it had been both my prison and my power. Derek had counted on my silence, had used it against me. But Ethan had found strength in a different kind of silence, the quiet patience of gathering evidence, the steady determination of a child who refused to let lies become truth. Tomorrow would determine everything. I had fired my lawyer, armed myself with recordings made by a 10-year-old, and placed my faith in a system that had so far seemed stacked against me. As dawn approached, I whispered a prayer to whoever might be listening. Let truth be louder than lies. Let justice see through masks. Let my children come home. The tablet sat on my nightstand, holding secrets that would soon shake the foundations of everything Derek had built. Ethan's quiet voice echoed in my mind. Play the Friday clip. Truth was about to have its day in court. The morning of the custody hearing, I threw up twice before leaving my apartment. My hands shook as I gripped Ethan's tablet, checking for the 100th time that the recordings were still there. In my bag, the USB drive felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Ethan sat beside me in the courthouse hallway, unusually quiet. He wore the blue button-down shirt I'd bought him for school pictures, his hair neatly combed. He looked older than 10, his face set with determination. Remember, I whispered, you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. He nodded. I know, but I want to. Maya clung to her stuffed rabbit, looking between Derek and me with confused eyes. She'd been staying with him during the week, and I could see his influence in the way she hesitated before hugging me. Derek arrived with his usual confidence, designer suit pressed to perfection, his attorney Richard Blackwell carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Derek's cologne, the same one he'd worn throughout our marriage, made my stomach turn. Emma, he said smoothly, loud enough for others to hear, I hope we can resolve this peacefully. For the children's sake. His performance had already begun. Inside the courtroom, Judge Wheeler looked tired, like she'd already decided this case would be like every other. She shuffled papers while Blackwell launched into his opening statement. Your Honor, we're here today because Ms. Sullivan poses a clear danger to her children's well-being. We have documented evidence of violent outbursts, erratic behavior, and an inability to provide stable housing. He presented the photos again, the broken plate, the overturned chair. Then came the police reports, each one painting me as unhinged. Finally, the doctored phone recording. As you can hear, Blackwell said as my distorted voice filled the courtroom, Ms. Sullivan regularly subjects her son to verbal abuse. I forced myself to breathe.
Wait.
Trust the plan. When it was my turn to speak, I stood on shaking legs. Without an attorney, I felt naked before the court. Your Honor, I'm here today to tell the truth. For 2 years, I've been painted as unstable, violent, and unfit. But that's not who I am. I'm just a mother who loves her children and married someone who became very skilled at manipulation. I described the pattern of provocation, the staged incidents, the gaslighting. I kept my voice steady, even when Derek shook his head theatrically, playing the concerned ex-husband to perfection. These accusations are fantasy, Blackwell interjected. Ms. Sullivan is attempting to deflect from her own behavior. Judge Wheeler looked unmoved. Ms. Sullivan, do you have evidence to support these claims? Yes, Your Honor. But first, I'd like to address the phone recording that was just played. I explained how I'd never had that conversation, how the audio sounded distorted because it had been manipulated. Blackwell smirked. Derek leaned back in his chair, confident. That's quite an accusation, Judge Wheeler said. Can you prove the recording was altered? I was about to respond when Ethan stood up. Your Honor, may I say something? The courtroom went silent. Judge Wheeler's eyebrows rose. Young man, this is a custody hearing. Children don't typically. Please, Ethan said, his voice clear. I have something important to share. Derek half rose from his chair. Ethan, sit down. This isn't appropriate. But Judge Wheeler held up a hand. Let the boy speak. Ethan walked forward, tablet in hand. My heart hammered so hard I thought everyone must hear it. Your Honor, I've been listening to my parents fight about truth for months. But I know it's real because I recorded it. Blackwell jumped up. Objection. This is highly irregular. Overruled, Judge Wheeler said, leaning forward. Continue, young man. Last Friday night, Ethan said, Dad thought I was asleep. He was on the phone in his study. I recorded what he said. Derek's face went pale. Ethan, what are you? Can I play it? Ethan asked the judge. Judge Wheeler nodded. Ethan touched the screen. Derek's voice filled the courtroom, crystal clear. She's gonna lose it in court tomorrow. I got my guy to splice her yelling from 2 years ago. From that time, she actually did get mad about me forgetting Maya's medication. Judge lit it up. By Monday, she won't have any custody at all. The beauty is, she can't prove it's fake. Who's gonna believe her? I've got 3 police reports, CPS complaints, the works. She's done. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched Derek's mask finally crack, real panic flooding his features. That's taken out of context, he stammered. That's not what I meant. But Ethan wasn't finished. There's more. From 2 weeks ago. Another recording played. Listen, Ethan's getting too smart. Asking too many questions. After I win full custody, we're moving. Fresh start. Maybe Arizona. Somewhere Emma can't poison them against me. I'll tell the kids she abandoned them. Give a year. They won't even remember her clearly. Maya started crying. Daddy, you said Mommy was sick. You said she might go away forever. Sweetheart, I can explain. Your Honor, Blackwell interrupted, sweat beading on his forehead. We need to verify the authenticity of these recordings. This could be. I have more, Ethan said quietly. He played recording after recording. Derek coaching Maya on what to tell the CPS worker. Derek laughing about the staged photos. Derek threatening Ethan to keep quiet. With each recording, The courtroom atmosphere shifted. The court reporter's fingers flew over her keys. The CPS representative in the back row leaned forward, taking notes. Blackwell sank into his chair. Judge Wheeler's face had transformed from tired skepticism to sharp attention. "Mr. Sullivan, would you care to explain these recordings?" Derek stood up, his carefully constructed persona crumbling. "This is entrapment. My own son turned against me. Emma obviously coached him." "I did it myself," Ethan said firmly. "Mom didn't even know until recently. I started recording because Dad kept telling me I remembered things wrong. He'd say something mean about Mom, then later say he never said it. He made me feel crazy. So I recorded everything to know what was real." Judge Wheeler turned to me. "Miss Sullivan, did you know about these recordings?" "Not until recently, Your Honor. My son was protecting evidence because he feared his father would destroy it. The original files are safely stored with his teacher, Mrs. Henderson, who can verify their authenticity." "This is ridiculous." Derek exploded, his careful control finally shattering. "You're going to believe a child's illegal recordings? I'll sue. Mr. Sullivan." Judge Wheeler's voice cut like ice. "You'll sit down and remain quiet, or I'll hold you in contempt." Derek sat, but his hands clenched into fists. "Your Honor," I said, "I also have a USB drive containing all recordings, plus metadata proving they haven't been altered. My son gave them to his teacher for safekeeping." Judge Wheeler called for an immediate recess. "We'll reconvene in 2 hours. I want those recordings authenticated. CPS, I want you to interview both children separately. Mr. Sullivan, you're not to have any contact with the children during this recess." As we filed out, Derek grabbed his lawyer's arm. "Fix this," he hissed. But there was nothing to fix. The truth had finally spoken, in the quiet voice of a 10-year-old boy who refused to let lies win. During the recess, Ethan and I sat in a small conference room while CPS interviewed Maya in another room. Ethan's hands had finally stopped shaking. "You were so brave," I told him. "I was scared," he admitted. "But I kept thinking about what you said in your video, about truth being stronger than lies." Through the window, I watched Derek pacing the parking lot, shouting into his phone. His perfect facade had crumbled completely. For the first time in years, everyone could see what I'd always seen, the real man behind the mask. My phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. Words spreading. "3 other women have contacted me saying Derek did similar things to them before you. They want to testify." The court IT specialist confirmed what I already knew. The recordings were authentic, unaltered. Mrs. Henderson arrived with the original USB drive and provided a sworn statement about Ethan's fear of his father finding the evidence. When court reconvened, Judge Wheeler's demeanor had completely changed. "I've reviewed the authenticated recordings and the CPS preliminary interviews. Mr. Sullivan, these recordings reveal a pattern of deliberate manipulation, false accusations, and what appears to be criminal tampering with evidence." Blackwell tried one last time. "Your Honor, my client's methods may have been misguided, but he was acting out of concern." "Counsel," Judge Wheeler interrupted, "your client admitted on tape to falsifying evidence. That's not misguided. That's criminal." She turned to the court reporter. "I'm ordering immediate temporary full custody to Miss Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan's visitation rights are suspended pending a full investigation. CPS will investigate all previous complaints against Miss Sullivan in light of this new evidence." Derek shot to his feet. "You can't do this. They're my children." "Bailiff," Judge Wheeler said calmly. As the bailiff approached, Derek pointed at me. "You'll regret this, Emma. Both of you will regret this." But his threats felt hollow now. The monster had been exposed, and everyone could see him clearly. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. Someone, probably the court clerk, had leaked that something dramatic had happened in the Sullivan custody case. I try to shield the children as we push through. "Miss Sullivan, is it true your son provided evidence of falsified accusations? Were you a victim of domestic abuse?" Marissa appeared beside us. "No comment. Please respect the family's privacy." That night, in my small apartment, we had our first peaceful evening in months. Maya curled up in my lap, clinging to me like she'd never let go. Daddy lied, she said in a small voice. He told me you didn't want us. Oh, baby, I've always wanted you. Every single day. Ethan sat beside us, finally looking like the child he was instead of the warrior he'd had to become. What happens now? Now, I said, we heal. The next week brought a whirlwind of changes. Derek's arrest made the local news. He was charged with evidence tampering, filing false reports, and custodial interference. His mugshot showed a man I'd never seen before, no perfect hair, no confident smile. Just anger and disbelief. The CPS agent who'd investigated me, Janet Crawford, came to apologize personally. I should have seen the signs, she said. In 20 years of this job, I thought I could spot manipulation. Your ex-husband fooled us all. He fooled me for 12 years, I replied. Don't be too hard on yourself. The video diary I'd recorded weeks earlier somehow found its way online. I suspect Marissa had something to do with that. Within days, it had been viewed thousands of times. Comments poured in from other women who'd experienced similar manipulation. You're not alone, one comment read. My ex did the same thing. Thank you for speaking out. My phone rang constantly. Journalists, domestic violence organizations, even a publisher interested in my story. But I wasn't ready for any of that. My focus was on my children. A new attorney contacted me, Daniel Morrison, a specialist in cases involving parental alienation and false accusations. I'd like to represent you pro bono, he said. What happened to you happens more often than people realize. Your case could set a precedent. Ethan struggled with the aftermath more than I'd expected. One night, I found him sitting in the dark, playing one of the recordings on his tablet. You can delete those now, I said gently. What if I forget? He asked. What if someday I start thinking maybe it wasn't so bad? Maybe I overreacted? I sat beside him. That's what gaslighting does. It makes you doubt your own reality. But you know what's real, Ethan. You always have. I feel guilty, he admitted. He's my dad. And you love him. That's okay. You can love someone and still know that what they did was wrong. We started family therapy the following week. Dr. Patricia Reeves specialized in helping families recover from psychological abuse. In our first session, she said something that stuck with me. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong. Others you'll doubt everything. That's normal. Maya's recovery was different. She had nightmares about being taken away, about never seeing me again. She followed me everywhere, even to the bathroom. The therapist explained it was a normal response to trauma. She needed to reassure herself I was really there. 3 weeks after the hearing, I got an unexpected call from Derek's mother. Emma, she said, her voice strained, I owe you an apology. I believed him. All these years, I thought you were the problem. Helen, you don't have to. Yes, I do. He's my son, but what he did was wrong. Those recordings. I never knew he was capable of such deception. The conversation was awkward, but necessary. She wanted to maintain a relationship with her grandchildren, and I agreed, with supervision and therapy. Derek's trial began 2 months later. I testified, as did Ethan, via closed-circuit television to spare him the trauma of facing his father. The prosecution played all the recordings. Derek's defense tried to paint him as a desperate father who made poor choices, but the evidence was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison, 5 years probation, and mandatory psychological counseling. The judge also ordered him to pay restitution for my legal fees and therapy costs. As we left the courthouse, Daniel Morrison said, "It's not just about winning. It's about setting a precedent. Other victims might find courage in your story." That night, I finally posted my video diary publicly, along with a written statement. For years, I believed I was crazy, unstable, violent. My reality was systematically dismantled by someone I trusted. But truth has a way of surfacing, sometimes in the voice of a brave child who refused to accept lies. If you're living this nightmare, know that you're not alone. Document everything. Trust yourself. And never stop fighting for your truth. The response was overwhelming. Messages flooded in from around the country. Support groups invited me to speak. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell our story. But the moment that meant the most came one quiet evening. Ethan was coding at the kitchen table while Maya colored beside him. No tension, no fear, just normal. "Mom," Ethan said without looking up, "I think I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. Or maybe a detective. Someone who helps people find the truth." I smiled. "You already are, baby."
You already are.
The final custody hearing, 6 months after that explosive day, felt different. I walked into the courthouse not as a defendant, but as a survivor. The same courtroom that had witnessed my lowest moment now saw my redemption. Judge Wheeler smiled as we entered. "Miss Sullivan, I've reviewed all the reports, psychological evaluations, home studies, children's therapy progress. I'm pleased to grant you full legal and physical custody of Ethan and Maya Sullivan." The words I'd fought so hard to hear finally filled the courtroom. Beside me, Ethan squeezed my hand. Maya, who'd insisted on wearing her lucky purple dress, beamed. Furthermore, Judge Wheeler continued, "Given Mr. Sullivan's pattern of manipulation and false accusations, his future visitation will require therapeutic supervision until a licensed psychologist determines he poses no emotional risk to the children." From prison, Derek had sent letters claiming he'd changed, that therapy was helping him understand his actions. Maybe it was true. Maybe someday he could have a healthy relationship with our children. But that healing would happen on their terms, not his. "Your Honor," I said, standing, "I want to thank you for seeing the truth. And I want to publicly acknowledge my son's courage. He saved us all." Judge Wheeler nodded. "Young man," she addressed Ethan, "your actions were extraordinary. In my 30 years on the bench, I've rarely seen such bravery and integrity." Outside, Daniel Morrison shook my hand. "You know you've inspired legislation? The Sullivan Protocol, requiring courts to authenticate digital evidence in custody disputes and investigate patterns of false accusations." The name felt surreal. Our nightmare had become a tool to protect others. That afternoon, we moved into our new apartment, a 2-bedroom with actual separate spaces for the kids. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. As I unpacked, I found the letter I'd written the night before the hearing, when I thought I might lose everything. I called the kids over. "Remember these?" We sat together as I read the letters aloud. Maya climbed into my lap, while Ethan leaned against my shoulder. "You don't need these anymore," Ethan said when I finished. "We're here. We're together." "Should we throw them away?" Maya asked. "No," I decided. "Let's keep them. To remember how far we've come." That weekend, we had a celebration. Marissa came, bringing her own children. Mrs. Henderson stopped by with homemade cookies. Even Janet Crawford from CPS visited, bringing art supplies for Maya. "You've changed how we investigate cases," Janet told me privately. "We're being trained to look for patterns of manipulation, not just surface evidence." As our guests mingled in our small living room, I watched my children laugh, really laugh, for the first time in years. The sound-filled spaces I didn't know were empty. Later, Ethan pulled out his tablet. "Mom, want to see something?" I expected another coding project. Instead, he opened his recording app and hit delete on the entire folder marked Dad's Lies. "Are you sure?" I asked. "We don't need them anymore." The truth won. Together, we watched months of pain and deception disappear into digital nothing. Then Ethan created a new folder, Happy Memories. "For recording good stuff now," he explained. That night, after everyone left, we started a new ritual. Instead of bedtime stories, we shared daily gratitudes. Maya was grateful for spaghetti and no more scary dreams. Ethan was grateful for Mom being happy again. I was grateful for truth, for justice, and for the quiet courage of a child who refused to let lies win. Months passed. Derek completed his prison sentence and began supervised therapy. His letters to the children grew more self-aware, less manipulative. Maybe prison and mandated counseling were breaking through his narcissism. Time would tell. I started speaking at domestic violence shelters, sharing our story with women trapped in similar situations. Document everything. I'd tell them. Trust your instincts. And remember, your children see more than you think. One evening, a year after the trial, I received an email from a woman in Ohio. Her ex-husband had been using the same playbook as Derek: false accusations, staged evidence, systematic gaslighting. But she'd seen my video, learned about Ethan's recordings, and started documenting everything. She'd just won full custody. "Your story saved my family," she wrote. "Thank you for being brave enough to share it." I read the email to Ethan. He smiled, not the uncertain smile of a traumatized child, but the confident grin of someone who knew his worth. "We should make a website," he suggested, "for families like ours, with resources and stuff." And so we did. Ethan coded most of it himself. We called it Truth Speaks Softly, because sometimes the most powerful truths come in whispers, in secret recordings, in the quiet determination of those who refuse to accept lies. The website grew. Support groups formed. Other survivors shared their stories. What began as our personal nightmare became a movement for change. Derek eventually remarried to a woman who knew his history and insisted on continued therapy. He maintained supervised visits with the children, slowly rebuilding trust. I won't pretend it was easy watching my children navigate that relationship, but healing rarely follows a straight line. 5 years after that pivotal court date, I sat in my office. I'd finally finished my degree and became a licensed counselor specializing in trauma recovery. On my desk sat a photo from Ethan's high school graduation. He'd been accepted to law school with a focus on family law and children's advocacy. Maya, now 11, had blossomed into a confident artist who used her experience to create powerful pieces about truth and perception. Her favorite painting hung in my office, a shattered mirror reflecting not broken pieces, but a complete image. She called it Seeing Clearly. That evening, as I prepared to speak at another conference, Ethan called. "Mom, I'm presenting my thesis proposal tomorrow. It's about technological evidence in family court proceedings. Guess what I'm calling it?" "What?" "When Silence Speaks: How Digital Documentation Protects Family Truth." Think Dad would appreciate the irony. I laughed. "Probably not. But I'm proud of you. I learned from the best."
Love you, Mom.
After we hung up, I opened my presentation for the conference. The last slide read, "They called me violent. They called me unstable. But truth doesn't need volume to be heard. Sometimes it just needs one brave voice and a little bit of silence to let it speak." As I shut down my computer, my phone lit up with a text from Maya. "Painting you something new. It's called The Day Truth Won. Can't wait to show you." I smiled, remembering that terrified woman who'd sat in a tiny apartment, convinced she was losing everything. She couldn't have imagined this ending, not the victory, not the healing, and certainly not the ripple effect our story would have on countless other families. But that's the thing about truth. It doesn't just set you free. Sometimes, if you're brave enough to speak it, it sets others free too. And sometimes, truth sounds like a 10-year-old boy saying in a quiet, determined voice, "Can I play something?" Sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything. Have you ever wondered what your children really see when they watch you, and what they might be quietly documenting? If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more powerful tales of truth, justice, and the unexpected heroes who change everything.